Hey guys, Scott Ulmer here with the next video in the series that we're doing, breaking down a deal that we're buying right now. In a few prior videos, we did a walkthrough of the property, went through for room by room, broke the rehab down, explained the costs. We get a lot of questions on how do you break down rehab costs. It's obviously a big unknown for a lot of people, and I will tell you, in real estate, there are ways you can get hurt if you don't know what you're doing. Dealing with contractors and big rehab projects is certainly one of the top. So going through identifying costs, giving tidbits on how you should look at properties and certain rehab items, giving some different options for those rehab items is something we've done on the prior few videos, and this is the next in that series. And so what I want to do in this video is break down what our decision is, whether we flip or we wholesale a property, and ultimately how we got to have that option, because without a deal, without a property, you don't have the ability to go make money. And so one of the things that we teach our folks is that no matter what, if you've got a deal, whether you have the funds lined up to buy it or not, put it under contract. You've got to control the property by virtue of a contract if you want to have a shot at making money. If you have a seller that expresses interest and says, oh yes, bring me an offer, or I would look at that, whatever the case is, that's great, but make sure that you put something in front of them so you have a contract that gives you control of the property. We had a deal recently that we were back and forth with the seller. They were very amenable and open to what we were proposing, and I said to the acquisitionist here at our office, put it under contract, and he wasn't sure why we would do that because we hadn't even seen the property yet, but I said put it under contract, let's have a formal agreement and a relationship now, then we can decide if it makes sense. We ultimately decided to pass on the property. We never would have gotten to that point without a contract. So when in doubt, $10 binds the contract, put it under contract, and then you can discuss your options at that point. So let me go ahead and go to the whiteboard here and break down the deal on Wilson. So just to give you a quick recap, these are the numbers. The ARV, which stands for the after repaired value, which really means what are the comps on the property? What is the house going to be worth when it's fully fixed up, ready to go, compared to all the other beautiful properties that you're looking at? Guys, the ARV is going to be the very top number. If you have a comp that is apples to apples, which means beds and baths, square footage, sold within the last 6 months and within about a quarter mile, half mile radius, you've got a very close subject property. When you have it comping at a certain, or selling at a certain price point, you're looking for the top comps, not the low comps, the top comps. The low comps are sometimes foreclosures or short sales, and those don't compare to a arm's length transaction, which is the top of the market. After repaired value is what it is worth when it's all fixed up. The rehab on this, which we just broke down in another video, is going to be about $40,000. Now, I've got to tell you, in my world, that's a big rehab. That is going to get you really far based on the price point of the home, and going to get you a very, very beautiful home at the end of the day. By putting $40,000 into it, you're going to be able to command a price of $230,000. So prior video, break down cost and room by room, how the rehab and how we came up to the $40,000. That also includes our good friend Mr. Murphy, which is the Murphy factor, which is always a little bit of a swing in case you overlook or miss something. And as I said on the prior video, you're going to miss something. It's just part of doing rehabs. You're not going to see everything. You haven't looked behind the walls. So there's always a couple things that we want to plan for in the case of an unforeseen, and that's where this $40,000 comes in. And the acquisition cost of the property is $130,000. So as you can see, we've got a nice spread there. We've got a $100,000 gross margin. That's before we do any work on the property. So looking at these numbers here, you say, gosh, what would you do? Do you go for the long dollar? And I'll do the math in just a second. Or do you go for the short dollar, which would be more of a wholesale? Now, that's going to be dependent on a few factors. Number one is, are you able to do a big rehab like that? If it's your first deal, or one of your first deals, I've got to tell you, don't take on major rehabs. It could get you burned out really quickly. It can get you in maybe some hot water if you don't know what you're doing. You have a contract that takes advantage of you. When you are doing big rehabs, that's when you can lose real money. I always discourage people from doing major rehabs early on. Minimal, cosmetic, that's a different story. When you're going really deep and doing basically a full-scale rehab on a property, and it's one of your first deals, that's a recipe for being burned out. So I would caution against that. And I'm going to come back to this and tell you exactly what we're going to do here with this property. But how do we get to this number? That's a question we get a lot. And I just want to share really briefly on what's called multiple offer strategy or multiple offer strategies. What we teach and what we advise is on every property that you look at, you give the seller really two options in the form of an offer. Option number one is a cash deal. Now, let me tell you, if you don't have funds lined up, and I have to assume that many of you watching this don't have funds lined up, that doesn't mean you can't make a cash offer. Yes, that's what I said. You don't have the cash, yet you're making a cash offer. Does that make any sense? It makes perfect sense. You can't tie the property up without making a formal offer, even if you don't have the funds lined up. And I've got to tell you, one of the old adages in real estate investing is find the deal and you'll find the money. And that is a very, very true adage. Now, you may have to scramble a little bit, but if you find a good deal and you put it under contract, representing that you have the ability to pay cash and close relatively quickly, you will find the money. But let's say that you do everything I just said, you find the deal, you put it under contract for cash, and you can't find the money. You still control the contract. Effectively, that controls the asset. You can always wholesale this to another investor or somebody that wants to take the long dollar, that has the cash, maybe has the fortitude and wherewithal to do the big rehab that you may not have based on where you are today. You can assign that contract for $5 grand, $10 grand. Frankly, if you had a deal at $125,000 or $130,000 and it's worth $230,000 fixed up, there's some meat on that bone. You could probably get a $10,000 assignment fee, maybe more, maybe less, but guess what? It's $10,000 more than you had today. Tie it up under contract, and if you can't find the money, find another investor to wholesale it to. So that would be what we call the short dollar here. Now, we made an offer to our seller at $125,000. By the way, the seller had bought it as an investment property. Actually, I think his father did some work into it. They rented it out. Tenants didn't really tear it up, but when the tenants moved out, the dad was a little older, didn't feel like messing with going back in and kind of cleaning it up, fixing it up, and they're going to be buying another property in another part of the state. So their interest in selling this really lied in the fact they didn't want to go in and repair it after the tenants, and they wanted to buy another property in another part of the state. So when we showed up, we made a cash offer of $125,000. Now, he was asking $160,000, and I didn't put that on. He was asking $160,000, so we offered him offer number one, $125,000 cash, quick closing, no contingencies, no inspection. We went over there and saw it and made sure that we were comfortable with that offer, and ultimately made that as a cash offer. We also made a terms offer. So in the multiple offer strategy, you're going to make a cash offer and a terms offer. Now the terms offer is going to be higher. Why? Because we don't have to come up with cash today. Cash is king. We all know that. Cash is king, and cash really speaks volumes, especially when you're making these types of offers. However, when you're making a terms offer, you're not having to come up with the cash today, and you have the liberty and the latitude to pay a lot more because you're not paying it in cash today. Guys, time is your friend when you're dealing with terms, right? So in this case, we made an offer of $150,000. $1,300 a month was our payment. 18 months was the term, and we were putting no money down. And by the way, that's the deal that the seller accepted originally. He saw the bigger number. He saw the fact that he was going to receive $1,300 a month for 18 months. And of course, we were interested because we had no money out of pocket. We could control this home without any real cost except for a monthly payment. And of course, we plan on selling it for more than that monthly payment, plus getting a big down payment and selling it for a lot more than the $150,000. Now, there might be some things we have to do to the home to get it to that point. I'm going to talk about that in the next video. But what I want to share on this one is the multiple offer strategy, and ultimately, do we flip out of it or do we wholesale, and what makes us the most money? We made the offer on terms, higher price, the dollars, if you add $1,300 over 18 months on top of the $150,000, it adds up to a lot more than the $125,000. So the seller takes the higher price. Not unexpected, and that was great. We put it under contract, we start to market it before we close it. Of course, we'd love to find a buyer before we close. We can't close with another buyer until we've closed our end. Really important from a legal standpoint, we don't lease or sell or anything until we've closed on it ourselves. That is illegal. So let me be very, very clear on that. You have to close first before you can release, sublease, resell. Any of the things that you're going to do, you have to close first. So in the time that we sign the contract, about 7 days later, we get a call from the seller and says, is that offer for cash still valid and still available? And we said, yes, it is. So we went back and forth and ended up at $130,000. What happened? Seller had a life circumstance change in his world and came back to the table and said, we'll take the cash. Again, cash is king. They must have needed the cash. They did. They had another project that they were working on. So when you make multiple offers, you're giving someone a choice. Everybody likes to have choices. What we have found is that most people will take the higher offer. Dollars and cents seem to make more sense at the higher number. but can come back to the cash offer. We've seen it happen many times where they come back and end up taking the lower of the two offers. So giving them the options is something that we encourage. You make a cash offer and a terms offer on every house that you have. Even if you don't have the cash, you still make the offer and want to give the seller some options at the end of the day. So ultimately came back, took the terms or the cash offer, and we put it under contract. We ended up negotiating it to $130,000. By the way, with an ARV at $230,000, we still felt pretty good about the deal. So question now becomes, what do we do with the property? Do we put the full $40,000 into it and go for the long dollar? Or do we take our $130,000 contract and try to find a wholesale investor, someone who wants to go ahead and buy it and put the long dollar into it? They do the rehab. We walk for a $5,000 or $10,000 fee, maybe more than that, but I would tell you, I wouldn't expect more than, I think if you could get $10,000 to sign this contract, I'd be happy, because you're leaving plenty of meat on the bone for the next guy to come in and take it for the long dollar. You make a nice spread and you go on to the next deal. Having said that, $10,000 versus, if you did the full math here, if you pay $130 and you have $40 into it, you're at $170. If $230 is the ARV, you're talking about a $60,000 gross margin. Now you're going to have some expenses with your money and some closing costs and some holding costs and utilities, and there's taxes. There's some things, right? There are going to be expenses when you buy, but you have a gross margin of $60,000. Even if you took 10 off that, you're still making 50 grand on the deal. I don't care who you are, where you live, what you do for a living, 50 grand is a nice little profit on one deal. So 50,000 would be the long dollar. The flip, wholesale, would be $5,000 to $10,000. So let me think really hard about that. 5 or 10,000 or 50,000. If I can do the deal, if I can do the rehab, if I can go the long dollar, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. 50 grand versus 5. It's 10 times the difference. And so because we have the fortitude and the wherewithal to do the rehab, that's the decision that we took. We're going to go for the long dollar because it makes us the most money. But guess what? We would never have the ability to do for the long dollar if we didn't put it under contract first. Even if we didn't have the money lined up and even if we didn't want to take it the long dollar, we still would have put it under contract because now we control it and we can assign that to somebody else for a fee. So multiple offers, number one, really good to give options. If you want to learn more, there's going to be an opportunity for us to share more with you and a link somewhere in the bottom of this video. But at the end of the day, you make two offers. Seller will take whichever one is better for them. I will give one little caveat here. Let's say you don't have the cash. And again, many of you watching this don't have the cash. That's normal. You would make the other offer a lot more attractive. So in a multiple offer strategy, one of the techniques is that you make the offer that you want them to take look really, really good, and the offer you don't want them to take look a lot less attractive than the one that you do. So in this case, we were really okay with either one. We didn't necessarily try to flower this one up so they would take this one over that one. We made an offer we thought was fair in both capacities, ultimately took terms, came back to cash. But if you don't have the cash, you can make the terms offer look really, really attractive, and the seller may be more inclined to go after that. So always make multiple offers. It's a great technique. It's a great strategy to give the seller the option to choose which is best for them. But again, I don't care if you don't have the money. Put it under contract. Use a purchase and sale agreement and give them $10 to bind it. Now you can go assign that to another person that wants to take the long dollar and still make money on it. It's about making money at the end of the day. We love real estate. We love working with people. We love training people. But why do we get up in the morning and show up and work hard? It's to make money. So we're here to show you every way that you can make money in real estate. You can always wholesale it if you don't have the cash. So I'm going to share with you in a subsequent video the exact breakdown of the math, how this breaks down, how we really were able to maximize the gain on the sale, which is one of our techniques here, how we sell on terms. I'm going to explain in more detail what that is, and ultimately how we can actually create 5 different paydays on this same deal, maximizing what we make. I'm not going to go further on this video, but I wanted to share just that. Wholesale versus flip. We're going to go for the long dollar, which is the flip, and we got there because we created multiple offer strategy and the seller ultimately took the deal. So that's the breakdown on this video. I've got a couple more in front of this, or after this I should say, that are going to give you the math, the meat and potatoes, and some of the really cool things that we do here that really maximize the gain on every time we make a sale. So I'm going to conclude this video with that. I'll see you on the next one. I see you've been watching our videos, and I want to give you a big thank you. If you've ever wanted to get into real estate investing, there's never been a better time than now. Click the link below for more information on how you can work with myself and my team, or visit pinkaffiliates.com. That's pinkaffiliates.com. We have a variety of options for you to get started at whatever level you are interested in. Click the link below, visit pinkaffiliates.com, and see what Pink can do for you.